we need a dramatic change for everything, Jeremy.
Where do we start?
In regards to charities and in regards to politicians' excesses, we all need to change.
Yeah.
No more revenue, no more increases. We have to cut the cloth. We have to find a way for all of us to give ideas to reduce the excesses of politicians and get rid of all these foundations and so-called charities, because, as you said the other day, these house and land packages, $4.5 million, what does that do to the cost of living to the people that live in that suburb, and all their council rates go up and all their water rates and sewerage rates go up?
Yeah, I think the people have got a vested interest in seeing to it that under the guise of inflation, which, they shrug their shoulders and say, well, that's sort of the way it is and we can't do much about it apart from put the interest rates up. Under the guise of the current economic circumstances, people are putting up their prices without justification. I have no doubt of that.
Exactly, because they can. And we sit here quietly grizzling around the barbecue, but not doing anything about it.
Well, what you said about the charities, the point I was trying to make the other day is that, you've got so many of these hospital and various other causes kind of lotteries that they sell tickets in. Now, I've got no knowledge as to how legit they are or how you see, as I said the other day, all we need is a simple law that neither the Libs or the Labor Party will pass, and that is a law that says we want transparency. All you got to do is to tell us how much of each dollar goes to the cause for which it was collected. Couldn't be anything simpler.
Exactly, Jeremy, and I agree wholeheartedly. We hear and see that the iron ore prices are down, but we don't see the shed prices coming down. We don't see the steel prices coming down. We don't see anything coming down, and all we hear them screaming all the time, we need more money, we need more money. Jeremy, I would rather have $100, and it's just an example, don't get me wrong, it will never happen. I would rather have $100 wage and be able to buy everything for that $100 than have 26 million like Alan Joyce did and then bring down a beautiful, wonderful aircraft business, He shouldn't have got 1 cent in my view because he destroyed Qantas.
Well, he got the blame. He also got the money, but he got the blame. But there was a board. Now, what was the board doing? Les, what do you think?
Well, I think not necessarily singling out Qantas as one company, but these CEOs and board members and senior executives now are getting significant sums of money, and it's not necessarily related to good old-fashioned performance. And
or productivity. Nobody talks
Qantas, we have Qantas shares, and they haven't paid a dividend to shareholders for, I think it's well before COVID. And you say to yourself, that doesn't make sense when the executives are being remunerated so well and so highly.
Yeah.
And there's someone like Alan Joyce, going back to Qantas in particular, has left the organisation in tatters, and he's still getting funds out of it. I mean, it just doesn't seem to...
it doesn't make sense.
No.
Well, all this, when you have a government, Maria, who is telling us that they're going to ease the cost of living burdens on us, and we're going to get cheaper electricity, and all these platitudes in terms of trying to soothe their conscience and our conscience. The reality is, and I start talking about the Reserve Bank and the CPI, when you get an electricity bill like I did the other day, and I've said to my wife, and she twigged as well, it was around about $100 more than what we paid the similar quarter last year.
Exactly.
So I plucked out last year's bill, And lo and behold, the general usage of electricity has gone up 38%, and the control load, which is the hot water component of it, has gone up 66%. Now, to me, that just doesn't have any real connection with a CPI figure. And
exactly.
I mean, Jeremy and I have spoken in previous episodes of the show where we've talked about car insurance. And when you get a premium rise of 18% or 25%, I know one fellow had a BMW, his premium rise was 45%. That is no way connected in a real sense to the CPI.
But it's measured. It gets counted, doesn't it?
Well, this
is
the problem with the CPI. In the weighted, basket of goodies that they calculate, they put, for example, insurance at a weighting of 5% versus other costs. Well, that doesn't, to me, make a great deal of sense. I think the weighting should be much, much higher. And in the CPI figures, energy isn't calculated. I mean, sure, energy goes into food prices, petrol prices, but the reality is that when you have, like I do, $100 increase one quarter, I mean, that's $400 a year. That's not too bad for me. I can withstand that, and I've got solar panels. But if someone didn't have solar panels, they'd be probably talking about $600, $700, $800 a quarter increase, and that becomes a sizable amount of money versus your cost of living.
Going back to the platitudes of the government, it's just words. They aren't acting. If you read and research, as I have, every other foreign company is cashing in on electricity and the revenue and the high profits that it's making. And us poor little bunnies out here are paying for it. We need a share of that revenue. We need a stake in that revenue. And as I say, reform, get rid of the foreign raiders that come in here and take all their money back to their countries. And we can own a portion of the electricity, and as that duck curve happens in midday, we can have free electricity because there's a lot of money coming in from France, Italy.
Well, it's not the money coming in so much as money going out. When you think Alinta is owned by the Chinese. The poles and the wires here in South Australia are owned by the Chinese. In fact, I think they make more money from their investment in the poles and wires in South Australia than any other component in their corporate portfolio, which tells you the story.
And look,
and the Chinese are going to be building 3 big batteries, one in Western Australia, one in Victoria, one here in South Australia.
Hey, listen, Maria, why don't we just go back, knowing that Australia contributes absolutely nothing, 1.3% to global emissions. Why don't we go back to the time when everything was cheap and everything worked, when we had coal-fired power stations that actually worked and provided us with reliable, cheap baseload electricity?
I'm in that forever. And them saying that nuclear is too expensive, well, hell, when you add up all the costs of everything coming in, the wind turbines, the solar panels, the cost of that is astronomical, not exorbitant, astronomical.
Well, it's a joke. We're bunnies. We allowed it to happen. We elected these people.
Had Australia...
I didn't either.
Had Australia invested in nuclear 20 years ago, it would have been a great deal cheaper. We would already be reaping the benefits, but because of, diehards and the Greens, I mean, the new generation kids, they're learning that nuclear now is a much cleaner energy and a much safer energy than what it was. And the new green movement is wanting nuclear. But our government here is just stuck in the sand.
The funny thing is, nuclear is zero emissions. It's the cleanest form of energy.
And it's really the safest form, because if you go back in history and look at the number of people who have died mining coal in the world, and all the knock-on problems that come from coal and coal dust, and Professor Plimer can tell you all about that chapter and verse. I mean, the coal industry has killed thousands, tens of thousands of people.
Yes, they have.
Nuclear power hasn't done that yet. Somehow they gloss over it because they think it's carbon, this evil thing called carbon. What absolute rubbish.
Yeah, all that, Jeremy.
And we're all organic. We're all made of carbon.
Yeah.
Yes. Jeremy and Les, look, all that rubbish, global warming, climate change, well, the climate change is every day.
Absolutely.
Look at yesterday.
Absolutely.
Yesterday was a mild day, today's a rainy day, and tomorrow will be sunny most probably. Yeah. Look, get rid of all that rubbish.
Okay, we will, my darling, and thank you for the call.